Chapter 2 India Events after 1960 Part 2. Let us do a recap. In the last video lesson we learned the following. Independence India achieved in 1947. In 1950 India became a republic and we had our own constitution. After that, the fathers of the nation, the makers of the nation stressed on social, economic and political progress, for which the Planning Commission was established, and every 5 years there were certain areas which were stressed upon for more development and progress. Liberation of Goa, Daman and Diu from the rule of the Portuguese. India went to war against China. There were Indo-Pakistan War. Prime Ministers of independent India are some of the points that we have already studied. Now, the Indo-Pak War of 1964. In 1964, Pakistani forcefully occupied Kashmir. Soviet Union tried to mediate. Mediate means try to bring both the parties together to sit and talk and solve the problem peacefully. But unfortunately in 1966, Lal Bahadur Shastri passed away in Tashkent. Now, there were many events that happened in the decade from 1970 to 1980. Let us see a few, and then as we go further in the chapter, we'll learn more about them. In 1971, a war between India and Pakistan took place, which led to the creation of Bangladesh. In 1974, the first atomic explosion in Pokhran, Rajasthan took place. Sikkim became a part of India. In 1974, verdict of Allahabad Court against the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi for using state machinery during election, which led to the declaration of emergency. Now, let us see the events that happened from 1966 onwards. In 1966, Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri expired. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi became the new Prime Minister of India. By that time, tension started in East Pakistan. Now, let us see the map of East Pakistan and West Pakistan. So if you see, there is something called East Pakistan and West Pakistan. This is East Pakistan and this is West Pakistan. So, the West Pakistan government was ruling East Pakistan, which led to a lot of problems for the people in East Pakistan. The reasons were, the people in East Pakistan said that their language, culture and lifestyle was totally different, due to which the West Pakistan government started suppressing the people, oppressing the people, so much so that the people started leaving East Pakistan and coming to save their lives. They ran into India and started settling, due to which India faced a big refugee crisis. India could not take the burden of so many people coming and providing them with facilities like medical aid, economic aid, due to which Indian government had to decide to do something. And the Indian government acted by sending the army into East Pakistan. A war broke out in East Pakistan, and then the Pakistani army was defeated and Bangladesh was formed. So if you see today's current Bangladesh, it looks something like this. This is today's current Bangladesh. Now, the 1974 first nuclear test, Smiling Buddha, was the code name given to it. This was India's first underground nuclear explosion that took place at Pokhran in Rajasthan on May 18, 1974. So you can see the picture here. of Pokhran, and it was done under the leadership of late Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. Now, in 1975, Sikkim joins India. Sikkim was a small state which was independent by itself, but then the people of that state had a referendum. Now, what is a referendum? A referendum means people of that particular region coming together and deciding through vote as to which country they had to join. So through the referendum, the people decided that they wanted to be a part of the Indian Federation, and ultimately in 1975 Sikkim became a part of the Indian Federation and it was called the state of Sikkim. Now we come to a very important phase in our independent India, that is the national emergency. The Allahabad court gave a verdict against Indira Gandhi government for using state machinery during elections. Now, when you are in election, a person cannot use anything of the government to fight elections, which was considered as breaking of the law. Therefore, many people came on the streets. There were nationwide protests and strikes and bunds, so much so that the law and order situation of the nation was going out of hand. Looking at this scenario, the government declared national emergency. The national emergency lasted from 1975 to 1977. Now, what is national emergency? In national emergency, people do not have their fundamental rights, or their fundamental rights are taken away or suspended by the government. Like for example, they do not have the fundamental right of freedom of speech and expression or movement. You cannot speak, you cannot write, you cannot talk freely. Secondly, you cannot move around in groups. You are not allowed to move, or you are not allowed to have associations. You are not allowed to go for any celebrations. People had to follow the rules only what the government was stated. But after 1977, elections were conducted. Now what happened after emergency? The Janata Party was formed, which defeated the Congress Party, and Morarji Desai became the first non-Congress Prime Minister, the first non-Congress Prime Minister of independent India. Unfortunately, due to internal differences in his government could not last long. After him, Charan Singh formed the government, but that too could not last long. There were elections again in the 1980s. In the 1980s, many important events started taking place. Indira Gandhi and Congress Party came to power. In the meanwhile, the Sikhs in Punjab started demanding for a separate state called Khalistan. Now Khalistan, they believed, were parts of Pakistan as well as India, telling that their language was different, religion was different, culture was different, due to which they wanted a separate state called Khalistan, which slowly grew into an armed struggle. Operation Blue Star happened in 1984. Operation Blue Star will be discussed in detail in the next chapters, but in short, the pro-Khalistan members took up arms and entered the most holy temple of the Sikh, that is the Golden Temple, and occupied it. Ultimately, the Indian government had to send the army to remove the terrorists. Indira Gandhi was assassinated. The Ulfa movement started in Assam, and Rajiv Gandhi became the Prime Minister. Rajiv Gandhi, the reforms that he did are in the following fields: Indian economy, science and technology, tried to solve the issue of Tamil minority in Sri Lanka. Now, in science and technology, Rajiv Gandhi believed that we can only progress and make our lives better and develop the country if we apply science and technology in our day-to-day life. But he was defeated in elections due to the issue of political corruption, that is the Bofors case. The Janata Dal came to power and Vishwanath Pratap Singh became the next non-Congress Prime Minister. His contribution was a reservation to the OBC, that is, other backward classes. But his government also could not last long due to internal differences. In 1990, Chandrasekhar became the Prime Minister of India. In 1991, Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated by LTTE, Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam. And by the end of 1980s, terror activities grew in Jammu and Kashmir. To be continued.